The faces no one spoke about. There are some secrets so powerful that an entire city can see them every day and still pretend they do not exist. Charleston, South Carolina in the late 1840s was such a place. At first glance the city looked peaceful and beautiful. Tall pastel houses lined the streets. Iron balconies curved like lace above cobblestone roads. Ships filled the harbor bringing wealth from rice, cotton and sugar. Music drifted from parlors at night and church bells rang every Sunday morning. But beneath this beauty lived a silence so deep that it felt alive. And once you noticed it you could never unsee it. Dr. William Hutchins noticed it by accident. He arrived in Charleston in early 1847 fresh from Boston carrying medical books, clean suits and the confidence of a young physician ready to build a future. At 33 he was careful, intelligent and practical. He had not come south to challenge the system or change society. He came for opportunity. Charleston needed doctors and he needed success. For the first few months everything seemed normal. Then one child changed everything. It was a warm spring morning when an overseer brought a 7-year-old boy into Dr. Hutchins' office. The boy had fallen from a wagon and injured his arm. His name was Jacob and he came from the Fairmont plantation. The injury was simple, a clean break. Dr. Hutchins worked calmly setting the bone, wrapping it with care. But as he did his eyes kept drifting to the child's face. Something felt wrong. The longer he looked the more his stomach tightened. Jacob had a narrow nose, a sharp chin and pale gray-green eyes. His hair curled in the same way. His brow sat at the same angle. Dr. Hutchins had seen that face before. 2 weeks earlier he had shared dinner with Colonel Thomas Fairmont. The resemblance was undeniable. It was not just similar features. It was the entire shape of the boy. The way he held his head. The length of his fingers. Even the expression he made when concentrating. Jacob looked like the colonel's son. Dr. Hutchins said nothing. He finished his work, gave instructions to the overseer and watched the boy leave. But the image stayed with him. Days passed. Then weeks. And once his eyes were open he saw it everywhere. In the kitchens of Charleston homes enslaved children moved quietly carrying trays and sweeping floors. Many of them bore faces that seemed strangely familiar. A young girl named Mary working at the Weston house had the same red-tinted hair and freckles as Mrs. Adelaide Weston's daughters. A boy named Samuel at the Reynolds estate had Judge Reynolds' broad forehead and wide-set eyes. A teenage girl named Hannah on the Pritchard plantation shared the same sharp nose and high cheekbones as one of the richest merchants in the city. It was as if Charleston was filled with reflections. Living mirrors. Children who looked like the city's most powerful men and women. And no one spoke of it. Not the masters. Not the servants. Not the churches. Not the newspapers. It was as if the truth itself had been locked behind an invisible door and everyone had agreed never to open it. What disturbed Dr. Hutchins most was not the obvious cause. He understood biology. He understood human weakness and power. What frightened him was the silence. A silence so complete it felt organized. Dr. Hutchins was not brave by nature. He was not reckless. He wanted acceptance, not trouble. But he was trained to observe and record. Facts mattered to him, so he began writing. In a private journal he noted names, dates and details. He told himself it was scientific interest. A study of heredity. Nothing more. But deep down he knew it was something else. It was evidence. His chance to speak came one humid June evening at a dinner party hosted by the Beauregards. The garden smelled of jasmine. Fireflies glowed in the dark. Laughter floated through the air. After dinner the men gathered on the veranda with brandy and cigars. There Dr. Hutchins found himself beside Reverend Jonathan Sawyer, a minister who had served Charleston for more than 40 years. The old man's hair was white but his eyes were sharp. Dr. Hutchins hesitated, then spoke. "Reverend, I have noticed something in my medical work here. Something troubling." The minister's hand tightened around his glass. "The children, doctor," the Reverend said softly. Dr. Hutchins froze. The enslaved children, many of them resemble their masters. The Reverend did not look surprised. "You are new here, doctor," he replied calmly. "There are things in Charleston that appear strange to northern eyes. This is not regional," Dr. Hutchins said. "It is observable fact." The Reverend turned fully toward him and set down his glass. "Some things are better left unexamined. Every physician in this city has seen what you have seen," he continued. "The question is not seeing. It is knowing when silence is necessary. If we speak of it, families will collapse. Estates will shatter. Children will suffer. And for what he asked. Truth. Sometimes silence is mercy, doctor. The Reverend's voice was gentle but final. He spoke of social order. Of fragile balance. Of unspoken agreements. He even spoke of kindness. How some children received better clothing, lighter work, small comforts because of this silence. Break the silence, he warned, and even those mercies disappear. When Dr. Hutchins walked home that night, Charleston felt different. The shadows seemed heavier. The quiet more deliberate. He realized then that he had stepped into something vast. Not a single secret, but a shared lie held together by fear, convenience, and tradition. And once you see such a thing, it begins to watch you back. The following week, Dr. Hutchins received an invitation. At first it seemed like a courtesy. Later he would understand it was a warning. And that was when the real horror began. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear part 2, make sure to subscribe, share this video, and comment below with your thoughts. Your support helps bring hidden histories and dark stories like this to life. Part 2. The Price of Knowing. Every secret has guardians. Not men with weapons or locked doors, but people with smiles, soft voices, and absolute certainty that silence is kindness. Dr. William Hutchins learned this the moment Mrs. Constance Hartwell invited him for tea. At first the invitation seemed harmless. Mrs. Hartwell was a respected widow, wealthy, well-connected, and known for her impeccable manners. He had treated her twice for minor complaints and assumed this was simply gratitude. He could not have been more wrong. Her drawing room was a picture of refined taste. Imported furniture lined the walls. Paintings from Europe hung in perfect symmetry. Silver tea service sparkled in the afternoon light pouring through tall windows. A young enslaved girl no more than 14 served the tea with quiet efficiency. Her movements were practiced, her eyes lowered. When Mrs. Hartwell dismissed her, the girl vanished without a sound. The silence she left behind felt heavy. After polite conversation about the weather and Charleston society, Mrs. Hartwell placed her teacup down with deliberate care. Dr. Hutchins, she said calmly, I understand you have been making certain observations about Charleston families. His stomach tightened. The tea suddenly felt too hot. I am not sure what you mean, madam, he replied carefully. Please do not insult my intelligence, doctor, she said, her voice smooth but sharp beneath the surface. Charleston is a small city. Word travels quickly among those who matter. You have been noticed asking questions, making comparisons, speaking to Reverend Sawyer about sensitive matters. Your curiosity has not gone unnoticed. Dr. Hutchins set his cup down slowly. I have done nothing improper, he said. I am a physician. Observation is the foundation of my profession. Mrs. Hartwell tilted her head, studying him like a specimen. You have been examining something this community has chosen not to examine, she said. That choice is not accidental. It is an understanding. With respect, madam, I believe in science. In facts. Facts, she repeated with a faint laugh that sounded like ice cracking. Truth is a dangerous luxury, doctor. Let me ask you something, she continued, leaning forward. What good do you imagine will come from giving voice to your observations? What do you hope to achieve? The question struck deeper than he expected. He had been asking himself the same thing late at night, staring at his journal. What was the purpose of his notes? What future did they serve? I believe truth matters, he said finally. Mrs. Hartwell laughed again, this time without warmth. Truth in this case would destroy lives, she said. Families would collapse. Inheritances would be disputed. Social order would fracture. And the children, doctor, what would truth give them? Recognition. Justice, he replied, his voice tightening. Mrs. Hartwell's eyes hardened. It would give them nothing, she said. No legal rights. No inheritance. Only painful knowledge they cannot use. At best it would satisfy curiosity. At worst it would burden them forever. She poured more tea, her hands steady. These children are cared for. They are fed, clothed, protected. Many receive better positions than others. Some are taught trades. Some gain freedom quietly in time. Your truth would remove the protection silence provides. Dr. Hutchins wanted to argue, but facts betrayed him. Jacob was learning carpentry. Mary worked indoors. Samuel was being trained as a servant with status. Mrs. Hartwell noticed his hesitation. Let me tell you a story, doctor, she said softly. 20 years ago a young lawyer came to Charleston. Harrison Welch. Brilliant, idealistic, foolish. He planned to expose what you were noticing. He wanted to publish it. To shame this city. Nothing violent happened to him, she said, smiling faintly. He was simply erased. No clients. No invitations. No credit. No housing. Within months he left ruined. The message was clear. Charleston does not punish with force. It suffocates quietly. Mrs. Hartwell stood ending the meeting. This city is unified, she said. When silence is agreed upon, it becomes law. You can have success here, doctor, or you can fight a current strong enough to drown you. I trust you will choose wisely. When Dr. Hutchins stepped back onto the street, the air felt heavier. He walked without direction past gas lamps flickering to life. Past churches glowing white in the dusk. Past homes filled with laughter and dinner conversations. He realized with a sudden ache that he loved Charleston. His practice was growing. He was respected. He had a future. And yet the faces haunted him. Jacob's eyes. Mary's freckles. Samuel's posture. Truth pressed against him like something alive wanting escape. That night he opened his journal and hesitated. Then he wrote again. But now he locked it away. In the days that followed, strange things began to happen. Patients canceled appointments without explanation. Invitations slowed. Conversations ended abruptly when he entered rooms. No one threatened him. No one accused him. They simply withdrew. Charleston was closing around him. And somewhere in the city someone was watching. Waiting to see which choice he would make. If this story pulled you in and you want part 3, don't forget to subscribe, share this video, and comment below with your thoughts. Your support keeps these hidden histories alive. Part 3. The Child Who Was Erased. Some lies are told once. Others must be told every day to everyone forever. And the most terrifying lies are the ones protected by an entire city. Dr. William Hutchins sat alone at his desk on Church Street, staring at his journal as the oil lamp flickered beside him. Outside, the sounds of Charleston drifted through the open window. Carriage wheels on stone. Laughter from a distant house. The low murmur of the harbor at night. Inside his room the air felt heavy. The journal lay open. Page after page of truth. Jacob age 7 resemblance to Colonel Fairmont. Mary age 10 resemblance to Adelaide Weston. Samuel age 8 resemblance to Judge Reynolds. Each entry was careful, precise, undeniable. These were not guesses. They were facts written in flesh and bone. Dr. Hutchins ran his fingers along the page and asked himself the same question he had been avoiding for months. What was it all for? He had been invited to join a prestigious medical society. His future in Charleston was secure if he wanted it. Respect, money, influence. All it required was silence. That night he made a choice. He would not expose what he knew. He would not publish or accuse or confront. But he would not destroy the truth either. He would keep his journal. He would remember. It was a compromise that tasted bitter even as he accepted it. The summer passed slowly under a brutal sun. Charleston baked in heat and humidity. Dr. Hutchins learned the art of not seeing. He trained his eyes to look away like everyone else. He treated patients, attended dinners, laughed at polite jokes, and every night he wrote. Then September arrived, and with it a story that shook even Charleston's careful silence. Senator Bradford Marchmont. The name alone carried power. Marchmont owned Riverside Plantation, more than 3,000 acres of rice fields worked by hundreds of enslaved people. He had served in Washington. His word carried weight in courts, banks, and churches. His wife Caroline was admired, envied, and untouchable. Their family represented everything Charleston believed itself to be. So when Caroline Marchmont gave birth to a daughter, the city celebrated. Then the whispers began. Something was wrong with the baby. Dr. Hutchins heard it first as a rumor that died when he entered rooms. Then as fragments of conversation quickly redirected. The baby Eleanor had dark skin. Not slightly dark. Not sun-kissed. Dark. Darker than her parents. Darker than her siblings. Darker than many enslaved children. At first Dr. Hutchins dismissed it. Newborns often look different, but the tension behind the whispers told him this was no exaggeration. There was only one possible explanation. And it was unthinkable. A white woman of Charleston's highest class bearing the child of an enslaved man. It was the nightmare beneath every unspoken rule. Yet what followed was even more disturbing. The Charleston Mercury published a birth announcement. Proper, brief, respectful. Then nothing. No christening. No visitors. No public appearance. The Marchmont house closed itself to society. Then quietly a month later word spread that the baby had died of fever. A small private funeral. No body displayed. No public burial. Charleston sighed with relief. The impossible had been erased. But Dr. Hutchins knew better. He learned first that Dr. Theodore Ashworth, the attending physician, had left town immediately after the birth. Unplanned. Sudden. Then he heard that the midwife patients had been sold to Georgia within days. 2 household servants sold as well. Pieces removed from the board. Then came Dr. Marcus Fleming. Fleming was young, from Philadelphia, and like Hutchins an outsider. Over drinks one night Fleming mentioned something strange. He had been called to Riverside to treat an overseer. While there, he saw a newborn baby being cared for by enslaved parents. The baby was mixed, and the overseer had reacted with fear, not anger, when Fleming noticed. Dr. Hutchins felt his heart pound. The timing matched. 2 weeks after Eleanor Marchmont had supposedly died. Dr. Hutchins spoke next to Daniel, an enslaved man who assisted him on house calls. Daniel denied knowing anything at first. Then later quietly warned him. That baby did not come from where they say. And people who ask questions disappear. It was enough. Eleanor Marchmont was alive, hidden on her father's plantation. Raised as enslaved property, owned by her own father. The truth was monstrous in its precision. This was not denial. This was planning. Records altered. Witnesses removed. Lives rearranged. A child erased from one world and buried alive in another. Dr. Hutchins could barely breathe when he realized the scale of it. This was what Charleston was capable of when silence was threatened. That night he wrote everything. Every name. Every connection. And then he locked the journal away and hid it beneath a loose floorboard. Because now he understood. The danger was not speaking. The danger was knowing. And someone knew that he knew. Within days strange things began happening. His invitation to the medical society was delayed. A patient cancelled without explanation. A shopkeeper hesitated before extending him credit. Nothing obvious. Nothing direct. Just pressure. A slow tightening. Charleston was watching him, testing him, waiting. And somewhere on Riverside Plantation a child grew up learning she belonged to no one. Not white. Not enslaved by blood. Only by law. And Dr. William Hutchins realized with horror that his journal no longer felt like protection. It felt like a death sentence waiting to be activated. Because secrets this large do not remain passive. They demand obedience. Or sacrifice. If this story gripped you and you want part 4, make sure to subscribe, share this video, and comment below with your thoughts. Your support helps uncover the darkest chapters history tried to hide. Part 4. The House of Hidden Lives. Some truths are so dangerous that they hide in plain sight. Charleston, in the late 1840s, was a city built on appearances. Every street, every grand house, every polite smile carried secrets that could destroy fortunes and lives if ever spoken aloud. Dr. William Hutchins was learning that understanding those secrets came at a cost. He had seen the patterns, recorded them in his journal, and learned the hard way that silence was survival. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for what he was about to witness at Riverside Plantation. It was early October when Dr. Hutchins received an urgent message from Dr. Marcus Fleming. The note was brief and cautious. Come quickly. Bring discretion. It concerned the Marchmont child. Hutchins' stomach tightened as he read it. He had kept the knowledge hidden from everyone, even socially influential patients. Now he would be forced to confront it. The carriage ride to Riverside felt like a journey through another world. Spanish moss draped over ancient oaks. The rice fields shimmered under the afternoon sun. The grandeur of the plantation seemed almost to mock him. Every building, every servant passing in the distance, seemed a piece of the living lie that had swallowed Eleanor Marchmont. Dr. Fleming met him at the edge of the main house. The younger doctor's face was pale, his hands shaking slightly. They had become friends, confidants through their shared experience as northern outsiders in a city that measured loyalty in silence. Hutchins followed Fleming through the back paths of the plantation, past fields, past slave quarters, until they reached a small cabin tucked into the trees. Inside, Hutchins saw the Child, Eleanor. She was sitting quietly on the floor, playing with wooden blocks. Her skin was the rich color of caramel, eyes dark and curious. She looked up at him briefly and then returned to her play, unafraid and yet knowing, in some instinctive way, that the world outside this cabin belonged to someone else. Dr. Hutchins wanted to speak, to touch her face, to confirm her identity, but Fleming laid a hand gently on his arm. Not here, not now. The couple caring for Eleanor were enslaved themselves, both in their 30s, already raising several children. They moved with a quiet, practiced efficiency. Hutchins observed how the baby's presence seemed natural to them, but how dangerous it would be for anyone else to acknowledge it. Their smiles were careful, their voices lowered. They knew the consequences of being caught speaking the truth. Fleming whispered, "She is the senator's daughter. No one will ever admit it. The Marchmonts intend for her to grow up as property. Owned, controlled, hidden. Legally she is enslaved. Her father will provide for her in the most literal sense, but the city must never know." Hutchins felt a cold shiver run down his spine. It was one thing to note family resemblances. It was another to witness deliberate erasure, the creation of a life lived in shadows for the sake of reputation and power. They left quickly, retracing their steps past the fields and trees. On the carriage ride back, Hutchins struggled with what he had seen. His entire understanding of Charleston society, of its polite manners and genteel veneer, seemed inadequate to explain the cruelty hidden beneath. He thought about Jacob, Mary, Samuel. All the children he had observed over the summer. All living proofs of the city's hidden truths. But Eleanor's case was different. Her life was not just ignored, it had been actively rewritten. Over the next few days, Hutchins found himself restless, unable to concentrate on his practice. He avoided patients when he could, spending long hours at home staring at the journal. Each page seemed heavier, laden with knowledge he could neither act upon nor forget. He began to notice subtle changes in the city. Conversations ended abruptly when he entered rooms. Invitations slowed. Colleagues seemed polite but distant. The unspoken current of Charleston's judgment pressed in around him. Hutchins understood then that knowledge itself was dangerous. In Charleston, knowing a truth could make you a target, even if you never spoke it aloud. And yet, he could not stop observing. That week brought another incident that reinforced his fear. He had been called to treat a minor injury at the Beauregard estate. While setting the boy's arm, he noticed features that mirrored the household master's in ways he had documented many times before. The child's resemblance to Mr. Beauregard was unmistakable. But when he asked a discreet question about the child's parents, the answer came with a warning in the tone alone. The caretakers avoided eye contact, murmured a reply, and moved on. The message was clear. Curiosity beyond a certain point would not be tolerated. Hutchins left the estate with a growing sense of dread. He realized that Charleston operated on a delicate equilibrium. Every family maintained appearances, every servant knew their place, and every observer was quietly tested. The city's power structure was not enforced by law alone but by an unrelenting network of silence, fear, and social expectation. He returned home to Church Street and reopened his journal. Eleanor's name remained unwritten, a blot of unspoken horror in the middle of the pages. But every resemblance he had ever recorded seemed to pulse with new meaning. These were not coincidences. These were manifestations of a society built on control and secrecy. Hutchins began to question his own role. By observing, by recording, by remembering, was he complicit? Or was he bearing witness in a way no one else dared? Night after night, he walked the streets of Charleston in thought. The gas lamps cast long shadows. Families laughed in their parlors. Children played on the sidewalks. And all the while the hidden children of Charleston moved unseen, lives rewritten, identities erased, futures stolen and disguised as routine. He understood one thing with stark clarity. The moment you knew, the moment you understood, the city demanded a choice. Comply with its silence, or confront it and risk everything. Dr. Hutchins had chosen compliance, but Eleanor's existence made him question whether silent observation was enough. Could he continue to sit at his desk, documenting truth while the consequences of that truth unfolded around him? Could he continue to participate in the quiet erasure of human lives, even as a witness? He realized there was no answer. Only survival, only the choice to observe, record, and navigate the currents of Charleston society without being swept away. And yet the knowledge burned in him like a quiet fire. He knew that sooner or later, something would force him to decide whether to remain silent forever or risk revealing what the city had worked so hard to conceal. Charleston thrived on appearances, on polite smiles and whispered agreements. But Dr. William Hutchins now knew the cost of those appearances. He knew that beneath the city's refined surface lay a world of secrets so meticulously guarded that even the powerful could not acknowledge them aloud. And in the shadows of Riverside Plantation, a child lived whose very existence threatened the delicate balance of the city. A child who would grow up in silence, and a doctor who would grow old carrying truths no one would ever speak. If you want to see part 5 of this gripping story, make sure to subscribe, share this video, and comment below with your thoughts. Your engagement helps reveal hidden histories and dark truths that history tried to bury. Part 5. Whispers in the Shadows. Some secrets are like shadows. The longer you look, the more they move. The more you try to understand, the deeper they become. Dr. William Hutchins had lived in Charleston for nearly a year. He had learned the city's rhythms, its polite society, and the unspoken rules that governed every interaction. But nothing had prepared him for what he was about to discover. The whispers began one crisp morning in October. Hutchins had been called to examine an elderly woman at the edge of the French Quarter. She was weak, feverish, but her room was quiet and orderly, filled with the soft smell of herbs and candles. Hutchins treated her with his usual care, noting her pulse and examining her closely. But as he left, a servant spoke to him quietly, glancing over her shoulder as if the walls had ears. "You should not ask about the baby," she said. Hutchins froze. Eleanor Marchmont. He had kept his knowledge private, confined to the pages of his journal, hidden beneath a floorboard. Yet whispers followed him now, reaching even the quietest corners of Charleston. Later that week, he was called to the home of Mr. and Mrs. Pritchard. Their son, a boy of 9, had a fever and rash. While examining the child, Hutchins noticed the familiar features that seemed to echo the family line. High cheekbones, the shape of the jaw, the tilt of the eyes. It was a pattern he had documented many times. But something was different. The boy's mother, Mrs. Pritchard, watched him closely, attention in her posture. Her servants lingered nearby, pretending not to notice Hutchins observing the resemblance. And in their eyes was a warning. "Do not ask questions," they said. Silently, Hutchins felt the weight of the city press down on him. He had learned the rules. Silence was survival. Observation could be tolerated. Curiosity beyond a certain point was dangerous. And now the rules were becoming sharper. Word of Eleanor Marchmont's survival had not spread openly, but it had not been entirely contained either. Hutchins began to notice small things. A servant looking uneasy when he entered a room. A child quickly withdrawn from view. Conversations that ended abruptly. Invitations delayed or quietly rescinded. The currents of Charleston society were testing him, probing to see whether he would speak, or remain silent. Then came the incident that chilled him to the bone. It was a Saturday afternoon when Hutchins was summoned to the home of Colonel Fairmont. A young girl named Clara had fallen while running errands, bruising her arm badly. Hutchins treated her with precision, but as he examined her, he recognized the features of Colonel Fairmont himself in her face. The resemblance was striking. He looked around the room carefully. Colonel Fairmont watched silently, his expression polite but unreadable. The servants lingered in the corners. Hutchins knew they were all aware of the truth, just as he was. And then he realized something else. Clara was not alone in her resemblance. Hutchins remembered Jacob, the boy he had first noticed months ago, whose gray-green eyes mirrored Colonel Fairmont's. Now another child bore the same features. A pattern was emerging. It was not random. It was deliberate. Charleston's elite were creating a shadow world within their world. Children born of enslaved parents, sometimes fathered by the very men who held power, were hidden, erased, or carefully placed under the care of other enslaved families. The resemblance was a secret message written in flesh, one that only careful observers like Hutchins could read. But the city's power structure ensured that no one spoke of it. Hutchins returned home that evening feeling a growing unease. The journal on his desk seemed heavier than usual. He flipped through pages, rereading entries, connecting children to families, mapping a web of hidden lives that stretched across Charleston. And then he paused on a note he had written weeks ago. Eleanor Marchmont, the child who was alive but erased from the world. The child whose life depended on silence. He realized the full scope of what had been done. This was not merely neglect or secrecy. It was a system, a deliberate manipulation of truth to preserve appearances, protect families, and maintain the city's social order. And at its center were the children, living proof of unspoken realities, their very existence denied by law and custom. Hutchins felt a surge of helplessness. He had observed, recorded, and remembered. He had complied with the city's rules. Yet the knowledge burned inside him, a quiet fire that would not go out. He thought of Eleanor, of Jacob, of Mary, Samuel, and Clara. He imagined them growing up in a world that would never acknowledge who they truly were. He imagined the fear and confusion they must feel, the subtle understanding that they were different in a way the world would never admit. And he knew that for every child he had seen, there were likely dozens more hidden in plain sight, lives carefully controlled, histories rewritten, futures constrained by a society that valued appearances above all else. The horror of it settled deep in his chest. This was not just a story of inheritance or scandal. It was a story of erasure. Of human lives reshaped to fit the comfort of others. And the more he understood, the more he realized that Charleston itself was complicit. Every citizen who turned away, every family who hid, every servant who complied, every minister who blessed the silence was part of the same system. Hutchins could not speak openly. He knew the lesson of Harrison Welch, the young lawyer who had tried to expose similar truths years before. He had been destroyed quietly, systematically, erased from the city without a single blow struck. Yet Hutchins also knew that knowing was a burden. And carrying that burden alone was heavier than any physical labor he had ever performed. That night he wrote again in his journal, careful to include every detail of the children he had observed, the families, the patterns, the timing, the whispers, the disappearances. His hand shook as he wrote Eleanor Marchmont's name for the first time in months. He hid the journal beneath the floorboard, as he had done before. But this time the act felt different. It was not just protection. It was a promise that he would remember what the city could not acknowledge, that he would bear witness even if no one else could. In the days that followed, Hutchins found himself more cautious than ever. He continued his practice, smiled at polite society, attended dinner parties, and nodded at conversation. Yet his eyes constantly scanned the faces of children, servants, and masters alike. Every resemblance, every gesture, every quiet look became evidence in his mind. Charleston was a city of appearances. But beneath those appearances flowed a current of truth so deep and so dark that few could survive it. Hutchins now understood that he was swimming against that current, even if silently. And somewhere on Riverside Plantation, Eleanor Marchmont grew. A child who belonged to no world, to no family, and to no law but the one that her father had dictated in silence. Hutchins understood that the city's secrets were not just social constructs. They were living entities, breathing, moving, watching. And anyone who knew them, even just a little, became part of their world, part of the delicate and terrifying balance that held Charleston together. Somewhere in the shadows, the city was waiting for him to make his next choice. If you are captivated by this story and want part 6, make sure to subscribe, share this video, and comment below with your thoughts. Your engagement keeps these hidden histories alive and brings dark truths to light. Part 6. The Price of Knowing. In Charleston, some truths were like fire. They could warm or destroy. And once seen, they could never be unseen. Dr. William Hutchins had spent months observing, recording, and silently understanding the hidden lives of the city's children. But knowledge, he was discovering, carried its own cost. It began with a letter. A small envelope, cream-colored, sealed with red wax, delivered to his door by a boy from a nearby market. No signature, no sender, only a brief message. Some things cannot be unseen. Be careful. Hutchins held the letter in his hands, feeling the weight of its warning. He had always known his observations were dangerous. But to have them acknowledged, even anonymously, was another matter entirely. He read it again. Some things cannot be unseen. Be careful. It was a threat, but also a confirmation. Someone else knew. Someone else understood. That evening, he met Dr. Marcus Fleming at a quiet tavern near the harbor. The younger doctor's expression was tense. "You received one too?" Fleming asked. Hutchins nodded. "The envelope. The message. Someone is watching us," he said. Fleming leaned closer. "That is Charleston," he whispered. "Always watching. Always judging. The moment you know something you were not meant to know, you become part of it. Part of the current, whether you want it or not." Hutchins felt a shiver. The Marchmont child, Eleanor, Jacob, Mary, Samuel, Clara, all of them, they were living proof of a city that controlled truth with invisible hands. And now someone else was warning him. Days passed. The feeling of being watched never left. Every glance from a servant, every polite smile from a master, seemed loaded with unspoken meaning. Hutchins began to notice patterns he had overlooked. A child withdrawn at a party. A servant who refused eye contact. Conversations that ended the moment he approached. Charleston was testing him, probing, seeing whether he would speak, whether he would step out of line, whether he would break the rules that no one had written but everyone followed. Then the tragedy came. It was a Thursday when Hutchins was called to Fairmont Plantation. Jacob had fallen from a tree while gathering fruit. His arm was broken badly. Hutchins examined him with professional care, setting the bone and bandaging it. But as he looked into the boy's gray-green eyes, he saw something new. Fear, not of him. Fear of what would happen if someone noticed. Fear that the truth of his father would be discovered. Hutchins realized in that moment that the children were not just hidden. They were trained to hide. Trained to suppress the truths written in their very features. The fear was inherited, passed down silently from generation to generation. He finished his work and left the plantation, but the image of Jacob's eyes stayed with him. That night, he wrote in his journal until his hand ached. He described the boy's injury. He noted the fear in his eyes. And he recorded the implications. These children were not merely living in silence. They were growing up in a world where their very identity was a threat. Hutchins knew the cost of this knowledge. If he spoke, even indirectly, he could ruin not only himself but the lives of these children. Silence was protection. Silence was survival. And yet, silence was a torment. Weeks later, he visited Riverside Plantation under the pretense of a routine consultation. The fields stretched endlessly, golden in the autumn sun. Hutchins had received permission to see Eleanor Marchmont, though the risk of discovery was higher than ever. Inside the small cabin, Eleanor played quietly with blocks. She looked up as he entered, her eyes dark and intelligent. She did not speak. She did not cry. She simply watched. Hutchins felt the weight of her gaze, as if she already understood what the world had done to her. Fleming arrived shortly after, quietly confirming Hutchins' observations. The child was growing healthy, learning, surviving. But she was also being erased. Every day she lived in the shadow of her father's power and society's denial. Hutchins left Riverside with a growing sense of despair. These were lives lived in secrecy, erased from history, protected only by the quiet complicity of those who controlled them. And he was a witness. A reluctant witness. Back in Charleston, the currents of society pressed harder. Invitations to dinner parties became rarer. Conversations were polite but clipped. Hutchins felt the subtle pressure to conform, to forget, to erase what he knew from his mind as carefully as the city had erased Eleanor from the public record. Yet he could not forget. Each observation added weight to the secret he carried. He documented everything in his journal, hiding it beneath the floorboard at night. Every resemblance, every fear, every hidden child was recorded. Each entry was a small act of defiance against a city that demanded forgetting. But Charleston did not forgive defiance, even silent defiance. Hutchins began to notice the subtle warnings everywhere. Servants avoiding his gaze. A friend in the medical community suddenly distant. A neighbor whose smile no longer reached her eyes. Someone, somewhere, was testing him. Waiting to see if he would step out of line. And then came the letter. A second. 1. This time it was more direct. Be careful, it said. Do not push too far. Curiosity can be dangerous. Hutchins folded the note carefully, his hands trembling. He understood now that Charleston's secret was not just about hidden children. It was about power, control, the ability to dictate who lived and who remained unseen. The city had taught him the rules: observe, record, survive. Speak, and risk everything. Hutchins sat at his desk that night and stared at his journal. The words on the page seemed to move under the light of the lamp. Each name carried weight. Each resemblance was proof of a world hidden in plain sight. And he realized the truth. The price of knowing was isolation. The price of knowing was fear. The price of knowing was carrying a secret too heavy for most to bear. He placed his hand on the floorboard that concealed the journal and whispered to himself. I will remember. Because no one else will. Because if he did not, these children, these hidden lives, would vanish completely. Not from the world, but from history. Charleston thrived on appearances. But beneath the veneer of polite society lay a shadow world, a network of secrets so meticulously maintained that any misstep could unravel everything. Hutchins had learned that the moment he stepped into this world, he became part of it. There was no turning back. And somewhere, in the quiet of Riverside and the fields of Fairmont, the hidden children lived, unaware that the city's gaze followed them every day. Dr. William Hutchins understood one thing clearly: to know the truth was to carry it alone. To act on it was to risk destruction. And the weight of that knowledge was more terrifying than anything he had ever faced. Some truths are too heavy for the world to bear. And some witnesses are forced to live in the shadow of those truths forever. If you are captivated by this story and want part 7, make sure to subscribe, share this video, and comment below with your thoughts. Your engagement keeps these hidden histories alive and uncovers truths that history tried to bury. If you want, I can create part 7 next and make it even more intense with suspense and secrets unraveling, keeping your YouTube audience hooked. Do you want me to do that? Part 7. The Shadows Speak. Some secrets have a life of their own. They whisper in hallways. They linger in empty rooms. And sometimes, they speak to those who listen closely enough. Dr. William Hutchins had spent months walking the fine line between observation and survival. He had seen hidden children, documented their resemblances to Charleston's most powerful families, and understood that every smile, every glance, every polite gesture carried unspoken rules. But now the rules were changing. It started with rumors. Soft murmurs he caught in passing at dinner parties, at the market, along the streets. Stories of unusual births, children who were quietly placed with enslaved families, children who should not exist according to the city's rigid social code. Hutchins had long known about Eleanor Marchmont, hidden on her father's plantation, a child erased from public life. But now it seemed the pattern extended further than he had imagined. He began to notice it everywhere. A young girl in the kitchen of the Beauregards had auburn hair and pale freckles, like the mistress of the house. A boy delivering parcels bore the same high forehead and sharp jaw as the Reynolds family. Hutchins' heart sank each time he saw a resemblance. Each time he recorded it, he felt the weight of the city pressing down on him. And then, one evening, he received an invitation that chilled him to the bone. It was from Mrs. Constance Hartwell, the widow who had warned him months earlier about the danger of speaking truths in Charleston. The letter was formal and polite, requesting his presence at her home for dinner. There was no explanation beyond that. Hutchins knew the risks. To accept was to be watched. To decline might draw suspicion. But curiosity, and a desire to understand the city's hidden world, compelled him to go. When he arrived, the house was quiet, more solemn than usual. Mrs. Hartwell greeted him with a polite smile, but her eyes were sharp, assessing. She led him to the drawing room, where a fire burned low, casting long shadows on the walls. Dr. Hutchins, she began, your observations have been noticed, she said. Not publicly, of course, but carefully. You have seen patterns that many prefer to ignore. Patterns that touch the very foundations of this city. He swallowed, his mouth dry. I have done nothing improper, he said. I merely observe. Mrs. Hartwell's eyes narrowed. Observation can be dangerous in Charleston, she said. You have seen too much, and yet you have remained silent. That is fortunate, but the city has its ways of testing those who know more than they should. Hutchins felt a chill. He had known he was being watched, but hearing it spoken aloud was different. Then she said something he had not expected. There is a gathering tonight, she said. A group of families. Private. Discreet. They will discuss matters of importance. You may attend if you wish. Hutchins hesitated. Why would she invite him? To expose him, or to show him the truth in plain sight? Mrs. Hartwell seemed to read his thoughts. You will see, she said. That is all you need to know. The gathering was held in the largest ballroom of the Beauregard estate. Only a few families attended, the most influential in Charleston. The conversation was quiet, almost conspiratorial. Hutchins listened from the edge of the room, pretending to examine a painting on the wall. He heard names he knew, whispered carefully. Eleanor Marchmont, Jacob Fairmont, Mary Weston, Samuel Reynolds, Clara Beauregard. Each name carried weight. Each name was a child whose life had been rewritten, erased, or hidden for the sake of appearances. Hutchins realized the truth. This was not simply a network of hidden children. It was a council of the city's elite, quietly managing the fates of those whose very existence could destroy them if acknowledged. They spoke in hushed tones about placements, care, trades, education, even freedom. Every decision was deliberate, every act hidden, and the most chilling part, they all agreed on one thing. Silence. No one outside this room would ever speak of these matters. No public acknowledgement, no scandals. Every child, every resemblance, every secret carefully managed, maintained, and protected from the outside world. Hutchins felt his hands tremble. He was witnessing the machinery of control in action. These were the invisible levers that held Charleston together. And he was now a part of it, whether he wanted to be or not. After the meeting, Mrs. Hartwell spoke to him quietly. You understand now, she said. The city depends on this system. Children are protected, families are preserved, society remains stable. Sometimes the truth is too dangerous to reveal. Hutchins nodded. He understood, but understanding did not ease the weight on his conscience. In the days that followed, he continued his observations, but with new awareness. Every child he saw, every resemblance he recorded, was part of a system more intricate and more terrifying than he had realized. And then came a warning from an unexpected source. A servant, who had worked in one of the plantations Hutchins visited, slipped him a note. Be careful, it read. You see more than you should. Some truths are watched closely. Hutchins felt a surge of fear. The city was alive, watching, protecting its secrets, and he had crossed an invisible line. He began to notice subtle signs everywhere. Conversations ending abruptly, children suddenly absent, invitations delayed or quietly cancelled. He was being tested, observed, measured. And yet, he could not stop. Every resemblance, every child, every hidden life demanded his attention. His journal became heavier with names and descriptions. His heart heavier with the weight of secrets that no one else would acknowledge. He thought of Eleanor Marchmont, growing quietly on Riverside Plantation, unseen, unacknowledged, yet living. He thought of Jacob, Mary, Samuel, and Clara, all children navigating a world rewritten to protect the fragile social order. And he realized something terrifying. The moment you know, you are part of the system. The moment you bear witness, you carry the responsibility of what you know. Charleston's shadows were alive. They whispered, they watched, and they waited. And Dr. William Hutchins knew he could never escape them. Some truths cannot be ignored. Some secrets will not stay buried. And in Charleston, the price of knowing was living with a world of shadows that no one else would ever acknowledge. If you are captivated by this story and want to see part 8, make sure to subscribe, share this video, and comment below with your thoughts. Your engagement helps uncover hidden histories and brings dark truths to light. I can continue to part 8 next, where the tension escalates, secrets start unraveling, and Dr. Hutchins faces the city's silent wrath directly. Do you want me to do part 8 now? Part 8. The city's secret eyes. Some nights in Charleston felt alive. Not with music or laughter, but with something darker. A presence that watched, whispered, and waited. Dr. William Hutchins felt it every time he stepped into the quiet streets after sunset. He had lived with the city's secrets for months now. Hidden children, erased histories, unacknowledged truths. Every observation, every name he wrote in his journal, carried weight. Every resemblance he saw in a child was proof of a world that existed only in shadows. But now he realized that knowing was dangerous. It began with small incidents. A servant refusing to meet his eyes. A friend in the medical society suddenly distant. Invitations to social events withdrawn without reason. Hutchins had crossed an invisible line. The city was testing him. And then the message arrived. A simple note, folded neatly, placed under his door. No signature. No indication of the sender. Just one line. You are watched. Hutchins' pulse quickened. He knew the sender could only be someone connected to the city's elite. Someone who knew what he knew. Someone who understood the danger of observation. He did not show fear, not outwardly. But inside, he felt the first real taste of dread since arriving in Charleston. The city was alive with secrets, and the secrets were alive with the power to punish. The next morning, Hutchins received an invitation from Mrs. Hartwell. Again, polite, formal, insistent. She wanted him to attend a private gathering at her home that evening. He knew it could be a trap. He knew it could be a test. Yet he could not refuse. He needed to understand. That evening, the Hartwell house was quiet, almost too quiet. The drawing room was dim, the fire casting long shadows. Only a few guests were present, the city's most powerful families. Hutchins felt their eyes on him as he entered, polite but calculating. Mrs. Hartwell spoke first. Dr. Hutchins, she said, your observations have drawn attention. Not publicly, of course, but quietly. You have seen too much. You have noticed patterns others prefer to ignore. Hutchins nodded carefully. I have only observed what I cannot unsee, he said. A man in the corner, tall and imposing, spoke next. Knowledge, he said, is a dangerous thing. In Charleston, to see too clearly is to risk everything. Lives, families, even your own place in society. Hutchins listened, feeling the weight of their presence. These were the people who controlled the city quietly. They managed appearances, guided destinies, and protected secrets. And he was now part of their world, whether he wanted to be or not. The conversation shifted to the children. Names were whispered carefully. Eleanor Marchmont, Jacob Fairmont, Mary Weston, Samuel Reynolds, Clara Beauregard. Hutchins' pulse quickened. These were the children he had observed, whose lives existed in shadows. The guests spoke in hushed tones about placements, education, trades, and futures. Every decision was deliberate, every act was hidden, and always, silence. Hutchins realized then that the city was a living organism, and the elite were its eyes, ears, and hands. Every secret, every child, every resemblance was controlled, managed, and hidden. After the meeting, Mrs. Hartwell spoke to him privately. You understand now, she said. This is how Charleston survives. Children are protected, families are preserved, society remains stable, but the truth, she warned, must never be spoken. Hutchins nodded. He understood, but understanding did not ease the burden on his conscience. The next days were tense. Hutchins felt eyes on him constantly. Conversations ended abruptly. Invitations disappeared. Whispers followed him in the streets. It was clear the city was testing his loyalty. And then the unthinkable happened. He was summoned to Riverside Plantation. Eleanor Marchmont had fallen ill. The child, hidden from the world, was now in danger. Hutchins traveled to the plantation quickly, heart pounding, aware of the stakes. Inside the small cabin, Eleanor lay quietly, pale but alive. Hutchins examined her carefully. Her condition was serious but treatable. He instructed the caregivers on medication and rest. As he left, he caught the eyes of the overseer. The silent warning was clear. This child's life was not just hers to live. It belonged to the city's secrets, to the hidden agreements, to the delicate balance that kept Charleston intact. Returning to Charleston, Hutchins felt the full weight of his position. He was a witness, a guardian of truths that no one else could acknowledge. And the city was watching him, testing him, waiting to see if he would step out of line. That night, He wrote in his journal more feverishly than ever. Names, ages, resemblances, observations. Every detail of Eleanor's illness, Jacob's injuries, Mary and Samuel's positions in their households. Every word was a small act of rebellion and preservation. Hutchins realized that Charleston was not cruel because it punished openly. It was cruel because it punished silently. Those who knew too much were tested, isolated, and watched. Those who spoke were erased quietly. The city had survived for generations because it controlled truth without ever showing its hand. And Hutchins knew he could never escape this truth. Some nights, he walked through the empty streets of Charleston, feeling the city's pulse. Gaslights flickered, shadows moved, and somewhere in the distance, children hidden from history played quietly, living lives carefully rewritten to protect appearances. He thought of Eleanor, growing stronger each day, her life bound to secrets she could not understand. He thought of Jacob, Mary, Samuel, and Clara, all children navigating a world that denied them identity. And he understood. To know the truth in Charleston was to carry a burden heavier than most could imagine. To act on it was to risk destruction. And to remain silent was to live in constant tension, balancing morality, conscience, and survival. Hutchins placed his hand on the floorboard. Beneath his desk, where his journal lay hidden. The pages were a map of the city's secret world, a record of hidden lives and forbidden truths. He whispered to himself, "I will remember." Because if he did not, these children, these erased lives, would vanish not from existence but from history itself. Charleston thrived on appearances, but beneath its polite streets and elegant homes lay a network of secrets, alive and waiting. Hutchins had seen it, he had documented it, and now he was bound to it, a witness to the shadows that spoke only to those who dared to look. Some truths cannot be ignored. Some secrets will not stay buried. And in Charleston, the price of knowing was living in a world where the eyes of the city watched every step, every word, and every choice. If you are captivated by this story and want to see part 9, make sure to subscribe, share this video, and comment below with your thoughts. Your engagement uncovers hidden histories and keeps dark secrets alive. If you want, I can create part 9 next where the tension reaches its peak, secrets are threatened to be exposed, and Dr. Hutchins faces a terrifying choice that could change everything. Do you want me to do part 9 now? Part 9, The Edge of Revelation. Some truths cannot be contained. Some secrets, no matter how carefully hidden, have a way of pressing against the walls that hold them in. Dr. William Hutchins had lived among Charleston's shadows for months, but now those shadows were closing in. It began with whispers, not the polite murmurs of polite society, but urgent, cautious words carried in the streets and alleys, in the kitchens and servant quarters. People were talking, quietly, but with more knowledge than they should have. Hutchins felt a tension he had never experienced before. Something was about to change. He received a note that afternoon, delivered by a trembling servant. There was no signature, only one line written in haste, "They are watching. The moment is near." Hutchins' pulse quickened. He had always known his observations were dangerous. But the warning now suggested that someone might act on what they knew. Someone might expose the hidden children. Someone might unravel everything. That evening, he met Dr. Marcus Fleming. The younger doctor's expression was grim. "There is movement," Fleming said. "Families are restless. Secrets are slipping. The city's elite are worried." Hutchins felt a chill. "What do you mean?" he asked. Fleming leaned closer. "People are starting to question the disappearances, the hidden children, the unexplained arrangements. Whispers are spreading beyond the private circles. Someone may speak, and if they do, everything we have witnessed could come crashing down." Hutchins understood immediately. Eleanor Marchmont, Jacob Fairmont, Mary Weston, Samuel Reynolds, Clara Beauregard. All of them, hidden for years, could be revealed. And if the truth came out, the consequences would be catastrophic. Families would be ruined, lives would be destroyed, the carefully balanced social order of Charleston would collapse. He returned to his small house on Church Street that night with a sense of dread. Every step felt heavy. Every shadow seemed to move. He pulled out his journal and read through his notes. Names, ages, resemblances, observations. Each page was a testament to lives erased and rewritten. And now, those pages might not be enough to protect them. The next day, Hutchins was summoned to a private meeting at the Beauregard estate. Mrs. Hartwell had sent word that it was urgent. Hutchins arrived to find the city's most influential families gathered in the grand drawing room. Faces he had come to recognize as the guardians of Charleston's secrets were tense, anxious. Mrs. Hartwell spoke first. "The city is restless," she said. "There are rumors, unconfirmed, but persistent. Some of the hidden children may be discovered. And if they are, the consequences will be far-reaching." Hutchins felt his stomach tighten. "What do you expect me to do?" he asked quietly. She looked at him steadily. "You are a witness," she said. "That is your role. Observe, document, and protect. Do not speak. Do not act. If you do, the balance will shatter." Hutchins realized the gravity of the situation. The children were more vulnerable than ever. Eleanor Marchmont's life, hidden in plain sight, could be exposed at any moment. Jacob, Mary, Samuel, and Clara were at risk too. The city's careful arrangements were fragile, and any one misstep could destroy them. That night, he visited Riverside Plantation. Eleanor lay quietly in her crib, her dark eyes open and alert. Hutchins examined her carefully, ensuring she was healthy and safe. He whispered to the caregivers, reminding them of the importance of secrecy and caution. Every precaution mattered. Every word and action could tip the delicate balance. Returning to Charleston, Hutchins felt a growing weight. The city's shadows were no longer merely observing him. They were testing him, pushing him to a decision. Should he speak? Should he continue silently? Could he bear the responsibility of knowing without acting? Days passed, and tension in the city grew. Whispers spread further, and Hutchins noticed strangers in the streets, watching, listening. The hidden children moved quietly, unaware of the danger pressing in around them. Every glance he cast at them was filled with worry. Every observation a reminder of the fragile lives in his care. And then the moment arrived. A man, unknown to Hutchins, approached him in the quiet of the market. He whispered hurriedly, "If you value your life, doctor, you will stop your investigations. Stop recording. Stop asking questions. Or you will face consequences you cannot escape." Hutchins felt fear grip him. He had known the danger existed, but hearing it directly was different. The city's shadows were no longer abstract. They were tangible, active, and watching him. He returned home that evening, heart racing. He thought of Eleanor, Jacob, Mary, Samuel, and Clara. He thought of the years of secrets, of erased lives, of children growing in silence. He understood that Charleston would stop at nothing to preserve the system, to maintain appearances, to control truth. Hutchins sat at his desk, opened his journal, and began writing with urgency. Names, dates, observations, details of hidden lives. He knew that one day this record might be all that remained to prove the truth. He wrote not just for himself, but for the children whose existence was invisible to the world. The city outside was alive, restless, and dangerous. Shadows moved in the streets, and Hutchins felt the eyes of Charleston upon him. He knew he could not leave. He knew he could not speak. He could only watch, document, and protect. Some truths cannot be revealed. Some secrets demand guardians. And Dr. William Hutchins understood that he had been chosen by circumstance to bear the weight of Charleston's darkest histories. He whispered to himself, "I will protect them. No matter the cost." The city would continue to thrive on appearances. The hidden children would continue to live in silence. And Hutchins, bound by knowledge and conscience, would remain their witness, their protector, and their guardian in the shadows. Charleston's secrets were nearing exposure. The next part of this story, the final part, would test Hutchins, the city, and the hidden children in ways no one could have predicted. If you are captivated by this story and want to see the final part, Part 10, make sure to subscribe, share this video, and comment below with your thoughts. Your engagement helps reveal hidden histories and brings dark secrets into the light. I can create Part 10 next, the final chapter, where all the secrets collide, tensions erupt, and Charleston's hidden truths are finally confronted. Do you want me to do Part 10 now? Part 10. The secrets unravel. Some nights, the air feels heavier than usual. The streets are quiet, but Charleston seems to breathe, to wait, to watch. Dr. William Hutchins had felt that weight for months, but on this night, the city's gaze pressed down like a living thing. Everything was about to change. It began with a whisper in the wind. Hutchins had been called urgently to Riverside Plantation. Eleanor Marchmont, the child hidden from the world, had fallen ill. The caregivers were frantic, and Hutchins understood immediately that the child's life depended entirely on him. As he rode through the humid streets, shadows clinging to the walls, he thought of all the children he had observed, all the secrets he had recorded. Eleanor's life was a fragile thread. If anything went wrong, the carefully balanced world of hidden children would collapse. At Riverside, the tension was palpable. The overseers and caregivers whispered in corners, glancing fearfully at Hutchins. He moved quickly, examining Eleanor. Her skin was warm, her pulse weak but steady. Hutchins administered what treatment he could, his hands steady despite the pounding of his heart. As the hours passed, Eleanor's condition slowly improved. Hutchins stayed by her side, aware that the eyes of Charleston were not just on him, but on every hidden truth he had ever seen. The city itself seemed to wait, silent and judgmental, for what he would do next. When Eleanor finally slept, Hutchins stepped outside. The night was still, but the weight of secrets pressed upon him. He knew that the fragile balance could not last forever. Someone could speak. Someone could expose everything. It was then that Mrs. Constance Hartwell appeared, as if from the shadows. She had come to check on the situation personally. Her face was calm, but her eyes held the knowledge of every hidden child, every secret carefully maintained. "Dr. Hutchins," she said, "the city watches and waits. You have done well, but Charleston's secrets are restless. The time for choices is near." Hutchins nodded, understanding the unspoken meaning. He could remain a silent witness, or he could act and risk everything. The following days were tense. Rumors grew louder. Whispers that had been contained now threatened to spill. Families moved cautiously, trying to maintain the appearance of control. Hutchins observed everything, recording every detail, every movement, every hushed conversation. Then it happened. A young lawyer, ambitious and naive, arrived in Charleston from the north. He had heard the rumors and sought to expose them in print. Hutchins recognized the danger immediately. If the lawyer published anything, every child, every secret, every hidden life could be destroyed. Hutchins met the lawyer in private, explaining the dangers. "You do not understand," he said. "The city is a living thing. It protects itself. To speak is to invite ruin." The lawyer did not listen. He planned to write, to reveal what he had learned. Hutchins felt a familiar fear. This was the moment he had dreaded. The balance could collapse in an instant. That night, Hutchins convened with Mrs. Hartwell and a few of the city's elite. They discussed the threat quietly, carefully. The solution was clear. The lawyer could not publish. The city would ensure it. Hutchins felt a pang of guilt, but he understood. The children's lives, the fragile balance, depended on it. The lawyer was confronted, persuaded, and eventually left Charleston. His ambitions ended quietly. The threat was neutralized, but Hutchins knew the danger would always return. Secrets cannot be kept forever. In the weeks that followed, Hutchins focused on the children. Eleanor grew stronger under his care. Jacob continued his carpentry lessons, Mary learned to read, Samuel became more confident in his household duties, and Clara developed a skill for sewing. Each child lived carefully, hidden but cared for, protected by those who understood the cost of exposure. Hutchins wrote tirelessly in his journal, documenting everything for posterity. Each page was a testament to lives erased from the public record, each word a promise that the truth, though hidden, would not be entirely forgotten. He knew Charleston would continue to thrive on appearances. The city's polite streets, its elegant homes, its powerful families, all depended on the careful management of secrets. And he had become part of that system, a guardian of the hidden, a witness to the lives that could not speak for themselves. One evening, as he walked through the quiet streets, Hutchins felt the city's presence more strongly than ever. Gaslights flickered, shadows shifted, and somewhere, in the distance, children played quietly in hidden corners. He thought of Eleanor, of Jacob, of Mary, Samuel, and Clara. They were safe, at least for now. Charleston's secrets would continue to shape lives, to protect and to control. Hutchins understood that he could never fully escape the city's gaze. To know was to bear a responsibility heavier than most could imagine. He whispered to himself, "I will protect them. No matter the cost, no matter the danger. The city may watch, but I will be their witness, their guardian, and their voice in the shadows." And so Charleston continued, a city of elegance and history, a city of hidden truths and living shadows. Its children grew quietly, its secrets preserved by those who understood their value. Dr. William Hutchins remained, silent but vigilant, a witness to the lives that would never appear in the records of history. Some truths cannot be spoken. Some secrets demand guardians. And some cities, like Charleston, survive only because their shadows are patient, watchful, and unyielding. The story ends, but the shadows remain. If you have been captivated by this story, make sure to subscribe, share this video, and comment below with your thoughts. Your engagement helps uncover hidden histories and keeps these secrets alive for those who are willing to see the truth.